welcome to the Grand Teton Music Festival's Backstage Pass, your weekly invitation to join together with your friends, colleagues to colleagues, musicians with audience members, and anyone who would like to be part of the GTMF musical family. My name is Eva Capoletti-Chow, and I am your co-host along with my friend Jerry Ho. I'm a violinist and I've been playing in the orchestra for almost 20 years.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jerry Ho. I'm the Associate Conductor for the Grand Teton Music Festival, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you and to be hosting this show with Eva. And of course, none of this would be possible without the technical assistance and guidance from Mike Richards, who is working behind the scenes.
So here we are, Jerry. It's episode 10. We did 10 weeks in a row. This is the last one in season 1, and we're going to close this down. And what I think about when I'm thinking about James Ehnes and Donald Runnicles is quality of musicianship and to be open and free to create. I just am so grateful to see what has been created off of just an idea to bring people together.
I mean, I'm so grateful for the chance to be having worked on this with you and with Mike and seeing the journey we've taken over the past 10 weeks. I mean, we've been great friends through the festival already, but to sort of also having a chance to work more intimately together in this way, like any collaboration, whether it's on stage or off stage, and it's born of many things: friendship, trust, camaraderie, and I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about it from our guests.
This show has a life of its own, just like music does. I am so excited to bring these guys forward.
One of our esteemed guests for this show today is our illustrious maestro, Donald Runnicles. He was music director of the San Francisco Opera, conductor emeritus of the BBC Scottish Symphony. He is the principal guest conductor of the Atlanta Symphony, as well as the Sydney Symphony. And when he's not with us in Jackson, he is at home in Berlin as the General Music Director of the Deutsche Oper Berlin. In addition, he has extensive guest conducting, leading orchestras around the world, such as the Berlin Philharmonic, Chicago Symphony, Philadelphia Orchestra. And we have been so fortunate to have him as the music director of the Grand Teton Music Festival since 2005.
And I would love to introduce our guest, James Ehnes. He's hailed as a violinist in a class of his own by the Times, and he's established himself as one of the most sought-after violinists on the international stage. He's a favorite guest of many of the world's most respected conductwe, and as you see in the screenshot picture here, certainly including Maestro Runnicles. He has, of course, performed with the great orchestras all over the world, and we have been lucky enough to have him perform here at least 5 times at the Teton Music Festival. And along with his concerto performances, he does chamber music. We were just talking a little bit before the show, and he was with his Ehnes Quartet and doing some recording. He has an extensive discography. He's won Grammys. He's won a Juno Award for Best Classical Album of the Year. And Eric Friedman, who was an eminent student of Heifetz, said of James Ehnes, "There is only one like him born every 100 years." So please help me in welcoming onto our platform James Ehnes and Maestro Runnicles.
Hello, Donald.
Welcome, Donald. Great to see you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be part of this again. Thank you for your very kind words. Wow, very touched. And welcome, James.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so nice to see you all. Bringing back a lot of happy memories.
What is coming to mind about happy memories as you're seeing our faces?
Well, likely everyone who is tuning in right now probably has some connection to the Grand Teton Festival, has had these magical experiences there. I mean, I don't think there's any place quite like it. I look at that background behind Jerry, and of course, physically, it's just one of the most stunningly beautiful places. I think the combination of people having a great time with making music in the most serious and meaningful way, that's really something incredible. It's not a gig, it's not a job, it's not like, oh, we're going to play this piece again or this piece again. It's like, I just get the sense everyone feels like this might be the memory of a career, what we're going to do this week. And that's amazing. It's wonderful to be a part of that.
Listening to your opening comments, Eva, Jerry, and talking about how and congratulations on this really unique and remarkable series. You've touched a lot of lives. You talked about if you like, bringing people together and then just seeing what happens. What I feel my role is creating an atmosphere, creating a safe space where everybody is given permission to relate to what is going on, and even though it's a collective experience, to still feel that you personally can contribute something very special to it. And I would say, James is one of my all-time favorite friends and colleagues, just a phenomenal musician. And I have also that feeling, and even though we've done some pieces a few times elsewhere, when you collaborate in the Tetons, it's not just the two of us, but our chemistry, if you like, is picked up upon from everybody in that hall, all the musicians. And then once again, one has permission to just let go, and one has permission to take risks. And one has permission to allow the other person to lead you somewhere perhaps you didn't even plan on going.
What I wanted to catch that you just said, James, was making music the most serious and meaningful way. And that brought me to something that you had said in an interview about the series that you created, Recitals from Home. And you said, it was important for me to do this project only if I could do it without any artistic compromises. And so those two parts that you just recently said in this, I would love to hear more about the creation of that, what brought it forth for you, like maybe what was behind that before you got started, and also what your experience was creating it, and then if you're willing, now that there's some hindsight to it, just to discuss, what maybe you're surprised by or changed by, or what you would have done differently.
To give you a little bit of background, I have recorded this set of recitals from my house. I'm not in my house now. A fairly antiseptic house. When things shut down, I think a lot of instrumentalists were digging into their the solo repertoire for their instrument. Of course, as a violinist, violinists are very lucky, right? With all this wonderful Bach and these 6 sonatas by Eugenie Zay. So I came up with this idea of filming these performances, 6 programs that would pair a Bach sonata or partita with an Izay sonata. When I first came home, like most people, I thought, might be a few weeks with no concerts. It wasn't too long after that I started getting the calls of cancellations going quite a bit further into the spring and summer. And there were a couple of European festivals that said, well, could you record some content for us from your home? And I thought, well, I'd love to, but I don't have any equipment to do that. I don't know how to do that. So like a lot of people, I got on this very steep learning curve. I bought some good microphones and started playing around with those. And I guess like nobody in the world right now has got the answers or got the solutions. Stephen Huff had the most beautiful tweet back in like April or something. He said, if you want to put performances of yourself on Twitter and Instagram every single day from your house, that's great. And if you don't want to do any of it, that's great too. Like, just nobody has the answers here. We're all trying our best to figure out what works for us. I felt like a lot of things, and like I say, this is not judging anybody for the way that they've been doing things. There are a lot of people that have put out a lot of stuff that I know has meant a very great deal to a lot of people, that to me has seemed disposable and not the sort of thing it's like, oh yeah, this is fine for now. I mean, I would never do this during normal times. And for me, that was hard for me to reconcile. It's like, if I was going to put the work into something, I wanted to be able to stand behind it and feel like it was something I could be proud of at any time, not just during some sort of weird shutdown. So I'm very lucky to have a really good sounding living room, which was, we discovered after we took out all the furniture and all the rugs. And so it's not really a living room anymore. It's just kind of a box, and it sounds good in there. And so I started doing these things for these European festivals. And I'd been working with one of my favorite people, a great friend and producer. His name's Simon Kiln. And he had given me some advice in terms of microphones, audio interface, like getting some gear set up. And I would send him little files of, I tried the mics at 60 inches, and then it's 61 inches, and then it's 62 inches, like these small differences. And And we got to a point where he said, I think the sound you're getting in your living room is pretty much as good as the sound we could get anywhere. He said, why don't you like start recording things for real? I thought, well, if I'm going to record them, I should probably film them. It's like, I don't know anything about filming. We just had in our house like a couple of iPhones and just a digital camera. So, get onto Amazon and buy some super cheap tripods. And I bought like a really, really cheap, flimsy studio light, but, it does the job. And then it was just endless hours of trying to get things looking sort of decent. And because, the one thing that I had was time, right, to experiment. And yeah, I filmed these programs, and the fourth episode actually goes up tonight at midnight. Then, the other part of it was it became kind of an experiment because I've basically had no income for 5 months. And I started thinking a lot about, well, what's the future for artists in general, performing artists that rely very much on, we have sort of an interface with our public, and that's the presenters. And if the presenters are not able to present, well, what do we do? Can we create a product that can then basically be brought directly to the consumers? So, I charge a little fee for these episodes if people want to rent them or if people want to buy them. I thought this was an important experiment to make for myself, but also just sort of for performers in general. Can we create a product that we can bring directly to our public? Our industry, of course, is heavily, heavily dependent on philanthropy. And for these generous people, I'm so grateful to all of them for what they do to keep us afloat. But I really thought, is this a model that can work? Will people pay for a product if I make it to the best of my abilities? And is this a path forward? And to be honest, I really don't know yet. It's too early to say. I wish that I could tell you confidently that it was like, yes, they were a huge success, or no, they were a dismal failure. But I mean, I don't know. And at the very least, it was a way to keep myself artistically really engaged. And how am I ever going to regret recording all that wonderful music? This way, I don't have to feel like I was lazy.
So it was all actually born of guilt, trying to keep the guilt
Maybe
down.
a little bit, yeah. It's like, well, what have you been doing during lockdown? I went to the beach, and yeah.
I would love it if Mike, if you can play a little bit of this, a recording of this.
But the faster you play it, the sooner it's over. See.
Well, I must say that, I remember when we were starting the show, Eva, that I had come across sort of before even the first recording had dropped of the series, James. And I think Gail Williams, our esteemed principal horn, had alerted me to it. And so it was something that inspired us, is thinking about what can we be doing to be putting great music out to help connect, and what are our friends, what are artists doing. And this was definitely one of the things that really inspired us. So it's great to see you here and to see where it is I guess that was almost 10 weeks ago, 10 weeks down the line, to see how that's lived and so forth.
Yeah, I've got even more hair now. So.
I was going to say, it's like, I was curious what your hair was going to look like, because
I can't wait. But I live in Florida and I'm in Georgia now. It's like, am I really going to go get a haircut? I don't know. Probably not.
Donald, I was wanting to sort of ask you, as a conductor, we don't have the luxury of picking up our instrument and putting on a solo recital from home. Well, we could, but I don't think anybody would pay $10 per episode for that. I don't know if there's anything you would like to say about what it's like as a conductor when we can't make any sound ourselves.
Well, speak for yourself. I've been known to make some sounds when I conduct, but not James. He's probably the closest to me. It has been a remarkable time because, as you know, we should make no sound at all. I mean, what I was saying earlier, Eva, about we create environments. We create, of course, we lead. Somebody has to start. Somebody has to give a downbeat. That's something I would like, by the way, each and every orchestral player to have to do, to get up in front of 80 players and get something started, not just somehow, but really together. It's a little easier than it actually is. We are completely at the mercy of orchestras, and as far as without them, I'm not making music. That's not entirely true, because for instance, what is now coming up, beginning tomorrow here, Music from the Mountains. I'm doing a great deal of piano playing. It seemed like a good idea at the time. I've had a few anxious nights playing, though, together with the few musicians who are here. I have an instrument, and in some ways, piano is it's most certainly not the most satisfying instrument to play, but when it comes to you don't need anybody else, although having just heard James play that remarkable Bach, one has the feeling that, and that's a lot to do with James's performance, you feel as if there are 10 instruments, there are 12 instruments, there's this dialogue, which of course, I always imagine Glenn Gould sitting at the piano, and sitting with the highest or the lowest piano stool possible, and he's here, and it's a little like some higher conscience, just observing all these little people and all these little communications between all these players and all these fingers. And with the piano, of course, you can create something yourself with harmony and melody, etc., etc. So I've had that, but I do absolutely miss the humanity inherent in great music making. The bond, the trust, the respect between a conductor and a soloist, between a conductor and an orchestra, between an orchestra and a conductor, an orchestra and a soloist. And it breaks my heart to miss that. And of course, I'm talking here from the Walk Festival Hall, where we should be in, I believe it's week 5. And of course, there is no music here, or no large symphonic music, but that is the case worldwide. It's something it's a form of communication. It's a language we all speak. I mean, it's a musical language through musical notation. But once again, I'm thrilled, James, that you, as you know and you understand, you're a profound part of this family here, and we are family members, and you get to know one another better and better and better. And through this process of getting to know people and musicians over a period of time, less and less has to be said. More and more is in a gesture. More and more is James turning around to the orchestra, to an oboist or to a clarinetist or to Gail, and nothing has to be said. And these are the sort of things I should imagine audience members look at and think, how did that work? Or did they rehearse that for hours? How did they get that together? And of course, we also know it probably is completely different to the way it was played last night or the night after. So there's that spontaneity. And for months to have missed that, it is like a relationship. It really, and of course hopefully we'll pick this all up at some stage. And the sooner the better. But it's that relationship building that I'm just missing in my life. And the amount of time I've had, as I said on the other program with you, I mean, it has afforded me certainly the chance to go and listen to all these recordings of things that I never thought I had time to do. And as I also said, I think anybody who claims rather haughtily that, oh, I never listen to other people's recordings, or it's just I do it the way I feel it, is being very mendacious. Of course we listen to other people's performances. We learn from other people's performances because we know ultimately we cannot imitate them, or you could imitate them, but you can't actually duplicate them. And so I've had a chance to really go back to some of the big symphonies, and I think I told you as well, just the missing part of the puzzle, Mahler's 7th Symphony. I'm still right here in my Bible at the moment.
Wow.
And my goodness, I mean, I'm just that kind of the time to have on a daily basis to just go and put it away, and then it's like putting something under your pillow, and then it's really that has been a gift, but it's come at the expense of something else that I will never ever take for granted again.
That part's so beautifully said, that never taking it for granted again. So I think this seems like a really good point to, if Mike, if you're willing, we would love to play a clip of the two of you collaborating, playing the Beethoven Concerto. So collaboration, and also just what were you thinking as you're hearing it again from this perspective?
It's so nice to hear it, but it's also, it's really hard to hear that right now. I mean, it's just been so many months without it. You know, I haven't played a concerto since the 1st of March, and supposedly I'm going to play one concerto date in September. That may or may not happen. You know, it's weird. Like that was, I used to do that every day. You know, that was a particularly interesting example of, like, I remember those performances, how every time those cadences would happen, it was like, how are we going to speak to each other at that moment? And I found that so fun and so inspiring and so interesting. And it's, yeah, there's not really any replacement for that. I think I was supposed to play Beethoven Concerto like 25 times this year, and I think I might end up doing it once. That's sort of a drag, but I've been very lucky to have done this a lot. And the people that I really feel for right now is, I mean, you know, Donald, it's like you've done it all and you're going to do it all again, because that's sort of where you are in the height of this incredible career. And you know, I think of these young people nowadays where this was their moment. This was their season where they were going to play their first Beethoven concerto, or their first Brahms concerto, or where they were going to have these opportunities to do things that they'd looked forward to their whole lives. And I really feel for those people that are missing out on that now, because yeah, I feel lucky that when things get back to normal, I know the phone's gonna ring.
The many artists, in my case, young singers at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. Jacqueline Stucker, for instance, is coming this week to do, she should have been here for the Mahler too, and is instead going to be performing some songs with me. And this is a young woman absolutely at the cusp of a great career. And yet I'm fully aware of the fact that her first, whatever the role, name the role, big role, at some big house has been cancelled. I think of somebody with whom I work regularly, to your point, James, somebody who's just at the beginning of this, and who was about to sing a big Wagnerian role at San Francisco Opera. It's gone, it's cancelled. And the question is, when will that come back again? And it's a little like going out to see the stars. Will those stars realign again to afford these artists that chance to sing these big roles? And yes, I mean, I feel very much that, and I've lived many lives already, and to be, and today's world moves so quickly, and if we continue the analogy with astronomy, you know, these shooting stars and then they're gone, and who knows whose shooting star would have shot up in what will ultimately, I'm sure, be 6 months, 9 months, perhaps a year, where the world gets a chance, or certainly the musical world gets a chance to recreate itself. But I suppose the question is, will it ever be the same again? Yet for all the fact that we will never take it for granted again, how long will it take to bring, whether it's the size of the opera houses, the size of the concert halls, has this gone forever? I don't wish to be too much of a Cassandra in this, but I think we all just hope and pray for that remarkable vaccine, which will, you think of diseases like polio, et cetera, where then there's, over years, but that's over years. But I have to get back to slightly lighter note in that, before we hold hands virtually, I was thinking about those couple of transitions. You remember, James, when we were rehearsing it, and just in that moment when we stopped at the end of the movement and then to go back on it, specifically that moment, just a little fermata, how we deal with it, and you have such a deft touch, and just listening to you, I should imagine there are many audience members who think, oh my goodness, how long have they been doing this? And they must be working an awful lot backstage to just get it that correct and fine-tuned. And if I were to tell the world that every time James and I are written down for a rehearsal with piano before our first rehearsal, we were usually down in the green room eating sandwiches, telling jokes, how are you, what have you been doing? And he doesn't lift his violin once. And it's not because we don't
very lazy, yeah.
Nothing to do with laziness, though. It has to do with what we've been talking about. It's just speaking a language, reading one another, just looking in somebody's eyes and knowing, I caught that inflection. I know what you're going to say. But it sort of happens in the moment, and you can talk about, beforehand, you can line it all up. But I would say the greatest artists with whom I've worked, and James is absolutely one of those, is ultimately there's very little you can talk about beforehand. Rather, you presume that the other person is very well prepared, and that's where it starts. But that's very often in a rehearsal. It's not talk. It can be talked about beforehand. But talking about something beforehand is sometimes a little redundant because it'll be completely different anyway in the performance.
I've had young people at the beginning of career, talk to me and say, it must just get so difficult, as your career goes on, there's more and more pressure and more expectation. And I always feel, no, it gets so much easier because, now I'm at a stage where a lot of my season in any given year will be working with people that I've established these wonderful connections with. That is, the reason that one of us feels comfortable with the other is because the other feels comfortable with that person. You know what I mean? Like we have this fantastic connection that I've just always felt from the first time we did the Walton together. And we get to play this wonderful music with all these fantastic musicians, whether it's at the Teton Festival or the other places where we collaborate. And yeah, that's so much easier than, when you're young and it's like maybe you're playing with an orchestra that really isn't good enough to be playing the piece, or you're stuck with a conductor that not a whole lot of thought was put into that collaboration, and maybe they feel this way and you feel that way, and how do you find that middle ground? And it's a little bit awkward. Whereas, when it all comes together beautifully, it's like, it is sort of the simplest thing, because it's this idea of a language. I mean, music is very funny. It crossed my mind the other day that these great composers, I mean, how incredible is it that it's like they create these individual languages that nobody else speaks, but everybody else understands? Like that a voice like Beethoven's is uniquely his own. No one else writes Beethoven's music. That is his language. But as musicians, when you find people that hear it and understand it in the same way, where it's just so utterly clear as to what is being said, I mean, it's incredible. There's nothing like it.
And yet at the same time, James, don't you think that many, many people can understand it, but they understand it in a different way to the person sitting next to them?
Yeah, they understand it in that way. And it's so fantastic. I mean, the incredible thing I think about being a listener to music is that I think we can all recognize you bring so much of yourself into that experience. And when there are those truly special evenings where a piece touches you in a particular way. I mean, that often has as much to do with yourself as with the music going on. And I think a lot of it has to do with atmosphere and has to do with collective mindset. I don't know quite how to say it, but you know, well, getting back to Grand Teton Festival, there is a special feeling in Walk Festival Hall because there's a special feeling from the orchestra. There's a special feeling from you and from the guest soloists, but also, you know, the people that are going to those concerts, they really want to be there. You know, I don't think there are many people that just kind of go to those concerts like, it's something to do tonight. You know, that there's this excitement in the hall of everybody recognizing that it can be something very special. And the more receptive people are, the more likely something special is going to happen.
So profoundly put, so beautifully put. You thought you wouldn't have a chance to collaborate this summer, but you're wrong. You actually do have a chance to collaborate this summer because we're going to introduce for the first time on our show this next segment to bring you back to your school days, Drop the Needle. We're going to have three pieces, and we're going to play a little excerpt from each one, from a piece, and we didn't want to make it too easy for you. We didn't want to insult your intelligence, but we didn't want to choose the whole repertoire. So we only selected from the last 10 years of the GTMF repertoire of recording.
You can edit me out, everything out, right? Or you can edit in the right answer.
Sure.
And,
Oh, I know that one. That's the yeah, my favorite.
well, you know, the two of you can confer and collaborate and think about some of these. So
Who's first? Is this James first, or are we doing this together?
I think
it's a collaboration. I think you two should do it together.
together. Whoever gets it first.
See,
Call that a collaboration? Oh.
Put your minds together and say the same answer at the
When
same
we play together, whoever finishes the piece first wins.
Shall we pull up the first recording, Mike?
Yeah, you are planning on returning next year, aren't you?
I'm hoping so. You tell me after the three choices.
We can edit this entire clip out.
Mike, if you could play the first one, please.
Okay, well, yeah, I should know that one, right? Yeah, Lark Ascending. So how come you did Lark Ascending without me? What's the deal, Donald? Come on.
It's too easy, James. It's too easy.
Anything
Not long enough. Your fee's too high. We need to get a nice big chunk of change from you. Isn't it amazing though? I mean, talk about being transported into another world, you know, like a meditation. We're chatting and then you hear the needle.
3 notes.
And you hear 3 notes and you are somewhere else.
Yeah, that's one of the most evocative pieces of music. Yeah, chills.
1-1. All right, we have a tie game right now. Number 2, Mike, please.
Rite of Spring.
That's why my hand was up.
Oh, we're supposed to call on you?
Yes, my
Yeah.
just before the final race to the end of the first part.
Yes. You know, I wanted to only play that one amazing chord before you have the bass drum playing to see if you guys could have picked it. I'm sure you would have.
Talk about sonorities. When you hear that, you think that is one of the most remarkable sounds you've never heard. I think only Stravinsky managed to find that. It's the high double basses, the contrabassoon, you know, in a range I'm not even sure you're insured that high. It's just, and that mix, that fragility, and then of course the world explodes. But all right, I'll give that to you, James. I put my hand up, but you're right.
Hi.
You both got it. You both got it.
So, Mike, our third and final clip for the day.
Oh, planets.
Ah, yes.
Okay,
I
so
played in that one.
What?
so we have a picture for you, James, for why Runnicles was able to get it faster than you.
You have a picture?
Mike, can you bring it up?
Yes.
This is the picture because this was on the same concert as that sublime Beethoven,
And
James
you're
was
looking
brave
at that
enough-
lick.
James was
Yeah.
brave enough to go sit in the orchestra and play the planets.
Yes,
And
and
this is-
I was busy at that moment, you see.
Actually, I thought that was a picture of both of you reading my Lebenslauf, reading my CV, you know, just where this conductor has been conducted elsewhere.
But I do recall just watching the violins scramble.
That was so cool for us that you came and played.
I've been very grateful that you've allowed me to do that. That's one of my favorite things about coming to the...
You are most allowed anytime to come and sit.
I
with
agree.
us.
I agree.
All right, so I think that's 3 for 3.
Bravo, gentlemen.
No chump stumped.
So this looks like a good transition point for me to say hello to a few people who are out and watching us. We have a bunch of participants. So I should say hi to a few board members: John Costello, Laurentis Marais, Keiki Brooks, Patty Jackwith, Philippe Sheringham. All thank you so much for being here with us. We have so many different people: Barbara Hertz, David Williamson, Joan Cataldo, Juan de Gomar, who also enjoyed your comment, Donald, about not being insured for those notes. Linda Hurwitz, Luna Shear, Marcia Peck, who, by the way, James, I should say that we did a program for Marcia Peck because it would have been her 50th season at GTMF.
Oh, wow.
And when I asked her which piece out of all the pieces she's played that we could play as part of her program, she had us play your Beethoven. She said it was one of the most beautiful concerts of her entire career.
Thank you. Wow.
So she's here watching us. Peter Benelil, Stan Trachtenberg, Philippe Chow, yay! That's my husband, that's why I'm saying yay. So thank you all for being with us. I agree with what you're saying, James, that we do it for us. It is our own unfolding being musicians, but at the same time, I'm really coming to have an understanding of how important those who want to listen is in what it is that's being created.
I would add to that, Eva, that I think what makes the Warp Festival Hall unique, in some ways almost in the world, is not just its wonderful acoustic. There are many halls that have wonderful acoustics, but it's the complete absence of an altar rail. It's the fact that the orchestra is not higher or not recessed. I say altar rail, this feeling of there's an area where, oh my goodness, sacrosanct. You can't trespass over there into the orchestral world. The immediacy of the first row and the first violins, or the first row and James Ehnes, the fact that they can turn the pages of the musician. There really is a bond there, almost a physical bond. The audience could just as well feel that they're sitting in the middle of the orchestra. And for some, I think that would be intimidating, but I think that's something that many audience members just salivate over, just that immediacy and this feeling of you are really like in the best studio in the world, or James's living room, or his box. You know, you're just enveloped by the sound.
I know, Mike, that we might have some questions from people who knew that this was going to happen. Do you want to come forth?
Hello, I'm here.
Everybody say hi to Mike, the behind-the-scene man.
My first time being a part of the program, so this is exciting. Yeah, I've got a couple audience questions for James and Donald. One is kind of along the lines of what James was talking about with the kind of younger musicians. Daniela asks that many performing musicians and educators have had to do their work almost completely in a digital format. And she's wondering, how do you convince students, audiences that our work is still valuable and essential? How can you monetize your work in the digital age, especially to those just starting out, if you had any insights to that?
You know, I think that every challenging time has a lot of opportunity as well. And I think the opportunity now for people is to think about, you know, what as an artist means the most to them, then how to how to create a product that you can stand behind. You know, it's sort of what we were talking about earlier. But you know, I think that there maybe was a time in the music business where people had an idea of trying to fit themselves into the infrastructure of the industry. And I think now it's maybe more important than ever to focus on what is the most compelling thing that you have to offer, and how can you create the most compelling version of that product. There's all sorts of technical things that musicians focus on that are ultimately not what people respond to, but people, I think, respond first and foremost to honesty. You know, some of my favorite performances of pieces have been bad performances, but they've been performances by students that mean exactly what they say. I think that one thing that we are able to do in this digital age that we're suffering through is everyone has basically figured out how to record themselves. That gives an opportunity for objectivity that we rarely have taken in the past. You know, I think that you can learn a lot about yourself recording yourself and comparing the difference between what you think you're doing and what you're actually doing. You know, the other part of the question in terms of what kind of path forward there is for people, there's a certain leap of faith, I think, that we're dealing with right now. We have to remember that this is an art form that has never been super comfortable. You know, I remember a music history teacher reading to me in a class back in university. We walked into this class and the person started reading from a notebook, and to paraphrase, was like, well, you know, the state of our so-called art music it's in a state of crisis. Audiences are getting older. It's too expensive. The young people don't care. You know, what's the path forward for this? And it was written by Robert Schumann in about 1848. You know, the thing that we need to remember in terms of being optimistic for young people is that people do care. And sometimes you can feel like, is there a future in this industry? And it's like, well, yeah, because ultimately there are enough people out there that don't just care a little, they care with everything they've got. If you feel like you have something to say, figure out how to say it best, and then figure how to get that out to people, because you probably do have something important to say. And sooner or later, hopefully you'll find that audience that responds to that and feels like, yes, we need this in our lives. What we do is so vital, and humans are social people, and it will continue to be vital and necessary. And those that are most creative in terms of how to get it out there and get it to their audience are the ones that are going to be most successful through this time.
I completely agree with James. I think what we face at the moment, and on some level paralyzes us to a certain degree, is the fact that for all the calamities that have happened in the past, and God forbid, whether it's a world war or some disaster or some assassination, or what have so many people fled to or sought out? As you said earlier, James, that it's something that it's something that is immediately accessible to you, even if you don't quite understand how it's played. It goes straight to the heart, and it's a song without words, and each and every person can, if you like, create their own words to it. And I think what we face at the moment, because of this pandemic, we do not have access to live music as we know it. We do not have access to, of course, we can go and listen to CDs, and well, one can still do that, but we think back on all the memorial concerts and what happens, and how people find solace and comfort and hope in music. And I think that's why it's unlike anything, I mean, certainly in my lifetime and many people's lifetime. I think we just have to believe that many, many people in past generations have also gone through great hardships, but there will be a light at the end of this tunnel. I do believe, of course, this is all more to do with medicine and with the science than with our professions. But I think young musicians just have to, as I've said before, I don't think I chose my profession. On some level, it chose me. There must be a reason. Why did it choose me? Why did it choose you? Why did it choose Ava, Jerry, Mike, and that it's going to take a little longer. One just has to show a bit more patience. And it's very easy for me perhaps to say, but I still think that's true. And I would just add to that, because Mike, you mentioned the monetizing. I think that is the biggest, almost the biggest challenge. It's imperative that our audiences don't think that we can just get music for free. To your point, to your recital series, that you seek some kind of remuneration. I think that's terribly important, because I really believe, and I hope this is not too controversial, I think the vast majority of people are unaware of how much it costs to put on concerts, how much it costs to create orchestras, how we are so dependent on the income from being a professional musician. We know what that means, but we also know that, and there are some remarkable statistics about philanthropy and where the vast amount of what supports us comes from the least number of people. We really have to grasp the fact that musicians need to be sustained not just by food and drink, but also by a degree of income. And I think that's something that all of our organizations, from the Grand Teton Music Festival, Washington, to the Deutsche Oper Berlin, to the Royal Opera House Covent Garden, that it's just how can you, in a time of crisis, still appeal to people who are also hurting monetarily to still continue to contribute towards the arts.
As someone who has a lot of friends who are young musicians who are just getting out of their doctorates and master's degrees, that's really great advice. So thank you. One last question for you guys comes from Bonnie in the audience. Do you think post-pandemic programming will be bolder because artists have made more online content, including a lot of non-traditional repertoire and new music? Or do you think programming will become even more conservative?
There will be conductors, instrumentalists that will have used the time to explore new repertoire, that then, of course, they'll be eager to find opportunities to do it. I think that programming, I think we tend to think of programming being, we look at sort of patterns on the one hand, and we're also very influenced by the programming that we see in our immediate, location. Like, say we have a home orchestra and we say, well, that's what our orchestra does. Playing all over the world, it's very interesting how the canon is not really the same. I mean, yeah, there are fairly safe bets out there, but there are places in the world where Bruckner means that no one will come, and there are also places in the world where Bruckner means that everyone will come, or Sibelius, or Shostakovich. So composers that we think of as famous composers definitely don't have the same level of draw in different places. The administrations of major arts organizations are going to have to take very close looks at their particular demographics, because they are going to need to fill the seats. And in some places, that is going to mean, Beethoven symphony cycles and Brahms and Mozart and Tchaikovsky. And in other places, it's going to mean some quite interesting and bold choices. Frankly, we all take risks with programming. That I've been to concerts where it's like, wow, that piece went over like a total lead balloon. I still believe in it. I mentioned earlier this idea of everybody's doing their best, and I think we're going to see a case where everybody's going to be doing their best, and people are going to be looking for the answers in their unique communities. And some people are going to find the right answers. Some people are going to find the wrong answers. And ultimately, as a performer, the programming that I will personally be responsible for will be the music that I believe in. And I've certainly made some interesting discoveries, and I look forward to the places where I might be able to share discoveries that are a little bit new or unusual or different.
James, when you mentioned the Sibelius, Sibelius symphony or Bruckner symphony, besides watching lots of recordings or listening to many audiobooks, I've also just been going back on some musical documentaries, of which there are many out there. And it was only yesterday I was actually watching the Michael Nupin two-part series he made on Jean Sibelius. and I watched the second part. It's called Maturity and Silence. It's a hauntingly beautiful. I recommend it to everybody who wants to get a closer look into the life and loves of, well, not loves, but the life and music of Jean Sibelius. Apparently, it was after the Fourth Symphony, he came to America and his music was performed. He conducted some music, and he was so popular and so adored. We're talking about in the 20s, that in a 1935 New York Philharmonic Society brochure, the greatest symphonist was considered by both orchestra and audience as Jean Sibelius, of anybody, 1935. I think with regard to programming, once again, something a little more anecdotal. One of the first things I received, and that's because I'm music director, but I'm sure a lot of people received it, when we were in the month of April, where it was clear this is going to last a little longer and orchestras are going to have to regroup and reprogram, I got these two fascinating lists of repertoire for up to 22 players or up to 45 players. And this was the publisher Boozy and Hawkes. Of course, it's very much in their interest to send it to us. But there were works in there I'd never heard or never heard of. And then I went to the website and listened to it. And I would say that in answer to the question about programming, I have learned a great deal more about smaller ensembles and what is out there, or symphonies that have chamber versions made of them. And I completely concur, James, with regard to there will always be a need for a Mendelssohn violin concerto. I don't think programming is going to change that much. I think, in fact, the absence of all those works that we have taken for granted will lead to a resurgence of a need to, it's not comfort food, it really is nutrition. It's kind of existential. But I think programming might be a little bit more varied in terms of the number of people on stage. We have a large orchestra, but certainly something I'm thinking about is just taking the concert experience and not feeling it has to be this, this sort of appetizer, and then you have usually you have the main course after the after the intermission, the overture concerto symphony experience. I think this might just enrich the repertoire generally, but I don't think it's going to change people's approach as long as science gives us the opportunity to have 85 musicians back on stage together, intense, intimate, deep, and that's where I think we will always return to the works that we love.
Thank you both. Those are really great questions and really fantastic answers.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mike. Since we're talking about collaboration, I'm sure we're all looking forward to the next collaboration between the two of you. And of course, I hope I'm not letting a cat out of the bag of the possibility of James being at the festival next summer. But I wanted to ask, are there pieces that the two of you have not had a chance to do together that you would love to do?
Besides Lark Ascending.
Besides Lark Ascending.
I feel very lucky that we've been able to do a fair amount of stuff, but there's so many pieces that we haven't been able to do. I mean, it's hard to know even where to start. I think that we were talking, we were last playing together in Atlanta back in October, I guess it was, or early November. And we were talking about maybe Berg Concerto at some point, which we've not done together. I mean, if we're lucky, we will have another Shostakovich 1, right? In next spring, I believe.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite memories of doing that with you. Honestly, I know that it was when you were the chief at the BBC Scottish. There was a performance of that at the City Halls in Glasgow. That I know it was for the radio. I'm sure there's a recording, and I'm sure I could ask for it and I could get it. But it's one of those memories where I don't want to hear it because it won't be as good as it lives in my memory.
It was. I'd love to do it again, James. That was one of my more nightmarish nights.
That was the city. That was the City Noir.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was this emotional wreck after having been seduced by you in the Shostakovich First Concerto, and I thought, and I can't say this on this program, the word that comes to mind, but I finished it, and there was applause, and And I thought, oh my God, John Adams, City Noir. I still have to somehow get through that piece.
I honestly, I don't know how you guys do this, conductors. Like, I finished the concerto, I'm like, well, that's it, you know, and
The bar. I know. And I was thinking, yeah, that's the way I want to feel, but I couldn't really feel that way.
you know, we are both huge fans of the music of Aaron Kernis, and Aaron J. Kernis wrote this magnificent violin concerto a few years ago for me that I would love to play with you sometime.
We will play that together, James. But, you know, quite frankly, you could offer me the white pages and I would play that with you too. You know, you make music out of virtually anything. And what a thrill that you're part of this program, and welcome back to your family.
Yes, thank you so much for being here, James. Until we can look forward to the two of you being on stage next year at Walk Festival Hall, Donald, if you could speak to us a little bit about what we have coming up for Music from the Mountains, so that to sustain us for the next 365 days, our little fix of Grand Teton Music Festival.
So eventually we came to this far smaller, essentially a chamber music format, where a number of musicians who actually live here too will be performing. Fima Bronfman very generously offered to drive to the Tetons, who had a recital last night in Aspen. And as I mentioned earlier, Jacqueline Stucker arrived today. We are putting a variety of repertoire together. I think one of the highlights will most certainly be Fima playing with four of our players, the Schumann Piano Quintet. There are Debussy songs, there are Schumann von Liebe und Leben. Fima will be performing Beethoven sonatas. We'll record them in the Walk Festival Hall. There are string ensembles. Gail will be playing, Gail Williams. And this will then be, it will be professionally filmed. It will not just be a videotape, so to speak. And it will then be put together as a series of 30, 40-minute concerts, which will be broadcast on our website. And this will not just be featuring music and musicians. It will be featuring the experience of being here out in the woods, in the wilds. There'll be interviews. We might experience Gail up on some butte with her alpine horn. So it's just also to give audiences not just the musical experience, but this holistic, almost spiritual experience that we all crave every summer.
Well, we were all looking forward to hearing the concerts, and I'm sure the entire GTMF family from all over the world will be tuning in to be cheering everyone on, and of course, counting the days until GTMF 2021.
We hope so. Thank you, Jerry. And once again, look, you, Eva, Jerry, have sustained this through 10 weeks, and you brought the family closer together. And I think what you've done is quite extraordinary, and thank you on behalf of the festival, on behalf of the community. Thank you so much.
A last thank you, James Ehnes. It's tomorrow is my birthday. You are my gift.
It's my wife's birthday tomorrow as well.
Oh my gosh, awesome! Well, okay, I wish her happy birthday. And normally I'm at the Tetons, and I love my birthdays, and so this year was like, oh man, you know, I'm gonna have to. And then this was what was brought forward. Thank you, Donald.
Our goal for this show was to connect with each other as our GTMF family, but also to connect with our audiences. Thank you to all our guests. Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Mike. And of course, thank you, Donald and James, for being a part of Backstage Pass. Until next time.